yourself?
My name is Ben West, and I am the Healthy Communities campaigner for the Wilderness Committee, which means I organize campaigns related to climate change and toxins, largely. Basically, I guess you could say I'm the urban and campaigner for an environmental group.
How did you come to work here?
I just thought that low pay and long hours was really the way to go. How did I come to work here? I guess it was really a community thing. I'd sort of known people who'd worked here for years, and I'd worked on campaigns with people from here for years, and then a job came up and I applied for it, and here I am. I'd actually been working for the Green Party before I worked here, and I actually took a big pay cut to come work here, but the opportunity to work on campaigns directly, instead of trying to get somebody elected to maybe someday work on campaigns, it just was a little bit closer to what I really wanted to do on a day-to-day basis with my life, and I'm happy I did.
Okay. Could you describe what the Wilderness Committee is about, or
Sure.
what it represents?
Well, here's where I sound like a guy standing behind an information table. The Wilderness Committee is Canada's largest membership-based organization. We have over 60,000 members across Canada. And the less sort of corporate pitch-sounding version of that is it's a grassroots organization. It's membership-based. We don't take money from corporations or any institutions. All of our money comes from our membership. We do most of our organizing in the community, so instead of going over there to the Premier's office, which you can see out the window. The point of that was most of the work that we do isn't about talking directly to the Premier over there in our office. It's actually about talking to people in BC and elsewhere in Canada. It's an organization that started in BC, and still most of the biggest chunk of our membership is in BC. But it's now a cross-Canada organization, and we work to try to conserve and protect wilderness areas. That was basically what the organization was founded to do.
Tell me, what have you accomplished so far that you're proud of, and can you give us some specific examples? This doesn't have to be with the Wilderness Committee, just you in general.
Okay. Wow. Well, a bunch of different things. Probably my favorite story, if you want sort of the personal one, actually was from Cap College. When I first got involved in the Capilano Student Union, it seems like several lifetimes ago now, there was no recycling program at Cap College. There was this really nice old woman who would go around the campus and would pick up bottles and would take those bottles and get the money from recycling them and would give it to the Capilano Foundation, which was great, and there was no cost to her doing it. So there's lots of money and no cost, which was great. But she eventually got too old to keep doing it and stopped collecting bottles, and all of a sudden they were just piling up all over the campus. And so we did all the things we were supposed to do. We went to all the committees, the various different committees of the college that dealt with the facilities on campus, and the budget committees at the college board and at the education council, and we had meetings through the student environment committee, and meetings. We met with the GVRD, now called Metro Vancouver, who handles recycling for the region. We figured out exactly how much it would cost. We made proposals. We even tried to make suggestions about how the money could be shifted around in the budget so that we could pay for it. We did all the things you were supposed to do. And ultimately the college board said, well, that's a good idea. Maybe we can do it next year. And, as somebody who kind of grew up, taking recycling as something that you just obviously would do, sort of for granted almost. I think perhaps it was sort of a generational thing. I think perhaps some of the board members, didn't go to elementary school and, learn all about recycling, so that to them it was more like an optional thing or something that you just did to do the right thing. And for me, the idea of not having recycling, and for many of my friends at the time, it was kind of like saying we weren't going to have washrooms on campus. It just seemed crazy that it wouldn't be there. So we did something fun. We organized a media stunt. It was right when the tuition fees were drastically increasing on campus at the same time. So we kind of combined the two issues. And we had students go around on campus and collect bottles. And then we brought them into the financial aid office and tried to turn them in for unpaid tuition fees. And we brought a bunch of TV cameras with us. And I learned a really interesting lesson from that. First of all, we got media attention. And they were interested because it was something kind of creative and topical and timely. And it was just a cute story, students doing something about recycling, And literally the next morning, the college president was on the radio announcing a recycling program for the college.
You already spoke of one challenge, the challenge dealing with the university. But are you having any challenges currently? Like the things that you're doing currently?
Well, I'm fighting the world's biggest companies for a living, so yes. And another thing you could see out the window, but maybe not right this moment, at the Burrard Inlet right out there, there's 2 giant oil tankers every week passing through that Burrard Inlet carrying 3 times as much oil as was spilled by the Exxon Valdez. And it's my job right now to try to stop that. So, to say the least, that's a big challenge. I mean, literally, Exxon, just to name one company, is the wealthiest company in the history of money. They actually made more money last year than any company ever has. So, when you're looking at who your opponents are in a campaign, fighting against extremely wealthy and powerful companies can be very, very difficult. What really makes it possible to do that kind of work, though, is that it's not just me doing it. It's communities working together, it's First Nations, it's and a lot of different people who have concerns. And sometimes that can be challenging too. Working with allies, and it can be challenging. You don't always all have the same vision of what the best way to succeed is. Sometimes it takes a lot of negotiations internally with the people that are on your side to even figure out what you're saying to the general public. There's a lot of different challenges, but it can also be really rewarding. Sometimes the biggest challenge actually is just burnout. A lot of people who do the kind of work that I do, only do it for a while and they get really tired or frustrated, or it's just a lot of work, and it can be really frustrating because you don't win a lot of the time. If you care really deeply about an area, to go see somebody bring a chainsaw and chop something down, or pave over something that you really care about, or whatever it may be, it can be really frustrating to see that happen. Especially when you're so wrapped up in it, and you know the people who are being affected by it. You really start taking things personally. So I guess there's a few different challenges. There's the challenges of the campaigns themselves, the relationships with people, both on your opponents and also even sometimes your allies, and then just sort of the self-maintenance stuff is probably one of the biggest challenges actually. In terms of sort of issues and things that motivate me, I actually was, before I was an environmental activist, I was an anti-war activist. It was actually the war in Iraq that really kind of got me involved in organizing as a student. I was also quite passionate about sort of education being a right and wanting to fight tuition fee increases and try to make sure there was access to education for everybody.
What do you hope to accomplish in the future?
So I try to set sort of short, medium, and long-term goals, both personally and as a campaigner. And then I kind of have little benchmarks and I check in and see how I'm doing. Because if not, it can be really frustrating doing this kind of work. Like if you don't sort of have these in-between steps that you can say, okay, I was trying to do this, and now we've done it, and now I can move on to the next goal. And, and it's all kind of pieces of a much larger strategy. Personally, though, and I think that's probably more what your question was, I guess my goal is to feel like the work that I'm doing is valuable, and I just kind of keep checking in with myself about how I feel about what I'm doing. Like, is this really what I want to be doing? Am I passionate about it still? Am I happy with, and part of that's like who you're working with.
I'm going to be running for the Environmental Issues Coordinator, and Herin's running for the International Issues Coordinator.
Cool.
I was just wondering, do you have any advice for us? What is it?
I guess I would say that you can learn a lot of really, really useful stuff from student politics. And I guess my advice would be to be really, really clear with yourself about what you want to try to accomplish, not get wrapped up in the politics, because it can often turn into sort of like a club, and where you focus so much on the fighting between different people's sort of political positions inside of the student society that people kind of lose sight of the sort of the fact that you're elected to do service for students, and they're paying you to sort of play this role of a service provider of a kind to the students. And also to be really aware of the limited amount of time that you really have. Like for one, you get elected, you've got a year, but then even within that year, you've probably got a job on the side, or some other things that you need to be thinking about, and school, of course, plus a life. So
little.
At least a little one, hopefully. For a lot of people, frankly, in student union world, their social life becomes a lot of the people that they're working with, just like in a lot of places that you work. So I guess if I learned anything I was involved in the student union for 4 years, and I kind of, the first year I went in, I sort of had a very different view than kind of later as I was there.
Well, 4 years,
It's a long time.
Yeah.
I was a student rep on the Board of Governors at CAP for 4 years and the chairperson of the student union for 3 years, which was no small thing. It was a lot of work. But I honestly, I mean, I probably got this job largely because of that work. Like, as much as the degree that I did, you know, the stuff I was studying was relevant, the experience I got being a director of a society was really, really relevant to, I mean, you know, this is a nonprofit society, that was a nonprofit society, there's a lot of overlap. And you learn a lot about campaigns, you know, meetings, and how to sort of effectively participate in them or not effectively participate in it. You know, there's a lot of little things that you learn that you wouldn't expect necessarily. And probably one of the most valuable things that I learned was being really smart about time management, like just you know, not taking on more than you can actually do, which is still a challenge because there's so many things that you want to do, but really being real with yourself about how much you think you can actually accomplish, and figuring out what you really would like to get done, you know, so that there's like, you got, but within my year I would like to do this, you know, and here's my plan on how to do it, and then you think through and talk to people what would be involved in it, and then you sketch it all out and try to have a plan of how to execute it. I actually first ran for environmental issues coordinator, and I lost by like 11 votes or something to somebody who's now a really good friend of mine. But and I mean, we became friends at the time, but we met when we were running. And in a sense, it was actually a good thing because I ended up running for the Board of Governors because I'd lost the environmental issues race, and that ended up becoming a big part of my life for the next 4 years after that. But I mean, I guess after my first year, I learned a lot about the sort of how things worked, and I became a bit more strategic about it. You know, so my goal as of my second year was to get really involved in the budget process and to try to get more money into financial aid. The one success that we'd gotten in the first year was we got, every time there was a tuition fee increase, there was supposed to be an increase by the same percentage to the amount of money that was going into student aid. So I wanted to make sure that that money was actually getting directed there and was actually being allocated well, and I wanted to try to increase it even more than that. So I got really into the detail level of the budget and started to lobby all the different members of the different committees, you know, outside of the meetings, to try to get them on board to support. Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is that you don't need everybody involved to make something a success. Like, there's data out there about sort of what percentage of people sort of actively engage in things, just generally speaking, and often we can be really frustrated because it's like, it seems like most people don't care. But the truth is that you don't need everybody to accomplish something. You just need the people who are willing and interested in getting involved in things to be interested in what it is that you're trying to do. You know, so you're really trying to reach sort of a niche market of people in a sense.
What I learned from the interview with Ben is like, Ben is a really good leader because he's casual and informal, but like he has a clear vision and like good strategies to accomplish his goals, and like he has a strong words to deal with, you know, so many challenges. And even though he failed to be, you know, elected for the first time, you know, for the CSU, but like he tried again and he planned so much detailed plans and like focused on like his budget to accomplish his goal, and that is really impressive. The other thing is I was worried about like getting people involved in our issues because I'm running for an international student committee as well. But he said like we don't need everybody to solve our issues. He said like we need just cool people who cares about our issues and are interested in our issue. So like he gave me some courage.
What I came to realize in this interview with Ben is that it's very hard in the non-for-profit field, and there can be so many challenges to face. But those challenges are worth it for the things that you can accomplish. I realized in order to achieve those goals and rewards, you have to work towards them by doing things like having good organizational skills, improving your time management, not procrastinating. I think those are all really important, as much as they're tedious, but they make a difference as to what you can accomplish.